The penthouse suite felt wrong tonight. Ethan couldn't quite name it, but something in the champagne-scented air had curdled. Maybe it was the way the city lights cast harsh angles across the marble floors. Or maybe it was just the truth finally catching up with both of them. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching his new wife move through their bridal suite like she owned the night. Olivia was radiant in that red silk gown, the fabric clinging to her like a second skin, her smile confident and expectant. 6 hours. That's how long it had been since they'd said, "I do." 6 hours since he'd slipped the platinum band onto her finger while 300 guests applauded. 6 hours of living a lie that was about to shatter. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice warm with invitation. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge the way she moved closer. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Tuxedo jacket discarded, blue tie loosened but still choking him, jaw clenched so tight it ached. "Ethan, come here." Her voice held a playful edge now, confusion creeping in at his distance. Finally, he turned. The look she gave him made his stomach twist. It wasn't guilt he saw there, or even awareness. It was something far worse. Anticipation. Like she actually believed this night would unfold the way she'd planned. "What's wrong?" she asked, reaching for his hand. He pulled back. "What's wrong?" Her smile faltered. "Why are you acting like this?" "It's our wedding night." A bitter sound escaped his throat. "Our wedding night. That's interesting, because for the past 6 months, I've been wondering if you even remembered you were building a life with me." Olivia's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "Don't." He moved to the desk, retrieving the envelope he'd hidden there before the ceremony. "Don't insult me by playing innocent. We're past that now." Her face went pale as he held up the evidence, the file that had arrived anonymously 3 days before their wedding. Proof of every choice, every transaction, every secret she'd sold to his family's oldest rival. "How long did you think you could hide it, Olivia?" His voice remained steady, controlled, which somehow made it worse. "Did you think I wouldn't find out what you gave away to save yourself?" Olivia's hands trembled as she reached for him again, her fingers barely grazing his sleeve before he stepped back. "Ethan, please. Just tell me what's going on. Why won't you touch me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He looked at her then, really looked at her, seeing the woman he'd thought he'd spend his life with. The woman who'd whispered promises against his skin. The woman who'd planned their future in careful detail. The house, the children, the life they'd build together. "Because I can't," he said quietly. "Because the moment I touch you, I make this real. And I'm not ready to live in a world where this is real." She moved closer, desperation replacing confusion. "Where what is real?" "Ethan, you're scaring me. We just got married. Everyone's talking about how perfect we look together." "How?" "Perfect." The word tasted like ash. "We look perfect. That's all that matters to you, isn't it? The appearance. The performance. That's not fair." "Fair." He turned back to the window, his reflection merging with hers in the glass. "You want to talk about fair? On our wedding night?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. "Because I don't understand what I did to make you hate me. I stood at that altar. I said my vows. I meant every word." "Did you?" He faced her again, and this time she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. "Then explain the file, Olivia. Explain what you sold to get us here." Olivia's hands trembled as she reached for him again, her fingers barely grazing his sleeve before he stepped back. "Ethan, please. Just tell me what's going on. Why won't you touch me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He looked at her then, really looked at her, seeing the woman he'd thought he'd spend his life with. The woman who'd whispered promises against his skin. The woman who'd planned their future in careful detail. The house, the children, the life they'd build together. "Because I can't," he said quietly. "Because the moment I touch you, I make this real. And I'm not ready to live in a world where this is real." She moved closer, desperation replacing confusion. "Where what is real?" "Ethan, you're scaring me. We just got married. Everyone's talking about how perfect we look together." "How?" "Perfect." The word tasted like ash. "We look perfect. That's all that matters to you, isn't it? The appearance. The performance. That's not fair." "Fair." He turned back to the window, his reflection merging with hers in the glass. "You want to talk about fair? On our wedding night?" Yes. Her voice cracked. Because I don't understand what I did to make you hate me. I stood at that altar. I said my vows. I meant every word. Did you? He faced her again, and this time she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Then explain the file, Olivia. Explain what you sold to get us here. He pulled the documents from the envelope, spreading them across the mahogany desk like evidence at a crime scene. Bank statements, email exchanges, photographs time-stamped over the past 8 months. Each one a small death of the future they'd promised each other. 3 days before our wedding, Ethan said, his voice eerily calm, "Someone sent me this. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Some kind of sick joke from a rival trying to sabotage us." Olivia moved closer to the desk, her eyes scanning the papers. He watched the color drain from her face as recognition set in. But it wasn't a joke, was it? He picked up a bank transfer receipt. $40,000. Deposited into your account from Marcus Rothwell 2 weeks before you said yes to my proposal. Ethan, let me explain. Marcus Rothwell. He repeated the name like a curse. The man who spent the last decade trying to destroy my family's business. The man who leaked our patents last year. The man who cost my father everything. She reached for the papers, but he gathered them back. It wasn't like that. No. He pulled out another document, an email chain showing dates, meetings, detailed conversations. Then explain why you've been meeting with him for months. Why you gave him access to our private files. Why you traded information about my family's finances, our partnerships, our plans. I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice, Olivia. You made hundreds of them, just none that included telling me the truth. Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, the red silk pooling around her like blood. My family was drowning, she whispered. My father's company was going under. We were going to lose everything. The house, our reputation, everything we'd built. Marcus offered to help. For a price. For information. She looked up at him, tears finally spilling over. Just business intelligence. Nothing that would really hurt you. He promised. He promised. Ethan laughed, that hollow sound she'd heard earlier. And you believed him. You believe the man who's made a career of destroying people like us. I was desperate. So you sold me. He moved closer, his shadow falling across her. You sold my trust, my family's secrets, the future we were supposed to build together. You gave away the only things that were actually mine to give. I can fix this. We can. There is no we anymore, Olivia. His voice dropped to something quiet and final. Don't you understand? The moment you chose him over telling me the truth, you gave away what was mine forever. Not money, not business deals. My ability to trust the woman I married. She reached for his hand. He pulled away like her touch would burn. That's why I can't touch you tonight, he said. Because you're not my wife. You're a stranger wearing her dress. And I don't sleep with strangers, no matter how beautiful they look in red. Ethan walked to the closet and pulled out the overnight bag he'd packed before the ceremony. The sound of the zipper cut through Olivia's sobs like a blade. What are you doing? She stood, panic replacing grief. Ethan, you can't just leave. We just got married. Our families, our friends, everyone thinks we're here celebrating. Let them think whatever they want. He grabbed his jacket, his wallet, his keys. Everything he needed to walk away from the life they'd constructed together. I stopped caring about appearances the moment I opened that file. Where will you go? Anywhere but here. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at the suite one final time. The champagne still chilling in its bucket. The rose petals scattered across the bed. The future they'd promised each other, reduced to expensive set decoration. Ethan, please. Olivia followed him, her voice breaking. Don't do this. We can work through this. I'll cut all ties with Marcus. I'll do whatever you need. Just don't walk out on our wedding night. He turned to face her, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Not forgiveness, just the ghost of what they'd had before she'd traded it away. You already walked out, Olivia. 8 months ago, when you chose to lie instead of trust me. I'm just the one closing the door. The elevator doors opened with a quiet chime. He stepped inside without looking back. The headlines hit before sunrise. Someone had talked. A hotel employee, a wedding guest, or maybe Olivia herself in a desperate attempt to control the narrative. By morning, Ethan's phone was flooded with messages he couldn't bring himself to read. Society's golden couple splits hours after I do. Wedding night walkout. Ethan Montgomery abandons bride. Perfect marriage over before it began. His mother called 17 times. His father showed up at his downtown apartment by noon, his face carved from disappointment and confusion. What the hell happened, son? The Rothschilds are calling. The Haverfords. Everyone wants to know why you humiliated that girl. Ask her what she did, Ethan said quietly, handing his father a copy of the file. The silence that followed was worse than any accusation. His friends divided themselves into camps. Some understood. Most didn't. They saw only the optics, a groom who'd abandoned his bride on their wedding night, who'd made a spectacle of their private pain, who'd chosen his pride over forgiveness. You could have handled this differently, his best man told him over drinks neither of them touched. After the honeymoon, privately, not like this. She handled it her way for 8 months, Ethan replied. I handled it mine for one night. But the words felt hollow, because in their world, appearances weren't everything. They were the only thing, and he just shattered the most important one of all. The letter arrived 3 weeks after the wedding, that was it. Cream-colored stationery, her handwriting still elegant despite the ink blots where tears had fallen. Ethan almost threw it away unopened. Instead, he poured himself a drink and read it standing by the window of his new apartment. Ethan, I won't insult you by asking for forgiveness. I know what I destroyed, and I know why you'll never trust me again. But you deserve the full truth, even if it doesn't change anything. My father didn't just face bankruptcy. He faced criminal charges for fraud. Marcus had evidence that could have sent him to prison for 15 years. He offered to make it disappear if I gave him what he wanted, access to your family's vulnerabilities. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd find another way out before it went too far. But every meeting led to another demand, and every demand made me more desperate to hide what I'd already done. By the time you proposed, I was trapped in a web I'd woven myself. The most selfish and cowardly part? I convinced myself I was protecting you by not telling you. That if you never knew, it wouldn't hurt you. I was wrong about everything. You said I gave away what was yours forever. You're right. But I also gave away what was mine. My integrity, my honor, my chance at real love with someone who deserved it. I'll sign whatever papers you send. Olivia. Ethan threw himself into work with the intensity of a man trying to outrun his own reflection. He took over the European expansion his father had been planning for years, spending 16-hour days restructuring deals and rebuilding partnerships Marcus Rothwell had tried to poison. The irony wasn't lost on him, using Olivia's betrayal as fuel to strengthen what she tried to sell. His apartment became a monastery of routine. Morning runs through the city before dawn. Black coffee instead of the elaborate breakfast she used to make. Evenings spent reading the philosophy books he'd abandoned when their social calendar consumed his time. He reconnected with his college roommate, Marcus, different Marcus, better Marcus, who dragged him to basketball games and dive bars that didn't care about society page scandals. He learned to enjoy silence again, to sit through an entire meal without performing for anyone. His sister visited on Thursdays, bringing takeout and unsolicited advice. You look better, she said one evening, studying his face in the lamplight. Lighter somehow. I feel like I'm learning to breathe again, he admitted. Like I've been holding my breath for years without realizing it. That's not about her leaving. That's about you waking up. He started painting again, something he hadn't done since college. Abstract pieces that made no sense to anyone else, but felt honest in ways his perfectly curated life never had. Each canvas was a conversation with a man he'd been before he'd tried to become someone else's idea of perfect. They met at his lawyer's office on a Tuesday afternoon when the autumn rain turned the city gray. Olivia arrived exactly on time, wearing navy blue instead of red, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger and more tired than he remembered. Hello, Ethan. Olivia. The formality felt like a death. 10 years of history, college sweethearts, late-night conversations, promises whispered in the dark, reduced to polite strangers signing documents across a mahogany table. His lawyer shuffled papers with practiced efficiency. This is the annulment petition. Both parties have agreed to the terms. Mrs. Montgomery, Ms. Chun, you're waiving any claim to marital assets or support. I am, Olivia said quietly. Ethan watched her sign her name, the motion mechanical and precise. When she slid the papers across to him, their fingers didn't touch. I heard about the European expansion, she said as he signed. Congratulations. Thank you. And I heard you're painting again. Your sister mentioned it. He looked up then, caught off guard by the detail. She shouldn't have told you that. I asked. Olivia's voice carried something he couldn't quite name. I wanted to know if you were okay. I am. He handed the completed documents to his lawyer. Are you getting there? She stood, gathering her purse. My father's serving 18 months. Reduced sentence for cooperating with prosecutors against Marcus. I heard. They stood facing each other, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like atmosphere. Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Olivia. She walked out without looking back. A year after the wedding that ended before it began, Ethan stood in a gallery, showcasing his first solo exhibition. Abstract pieces in blues and grays, each one a meditation on loss and reconstruction. The invitation list was small. Friends who'd stayed, family who'd understood, strangers who saw art instead of scandal. His sister found him staring at the centerpiece, a canvas he'd titled, "The Empty Space Where Trust Used to Live." You know what's remarkable? She said. You're smiling. He was. Not the practiced smile he'd worn through years of being the perfect son, the perfect partner, the perfect fixture in a world that valued appearance over authenticity. His smile felt earned. I keep thinking about that night, he admitted. How it felt like the end of everything. But it wasn't an ending. It was permission to stop pretending. A woman approached the painting, studying it with genuine interest. Not someone from his old world. Just someone who appreciated what he'd created without needing to know the story behind it. Do you regret it? His sister asked. Walking away, I regret loving someone who couldn't love me honestly. He turned from the painting. But I don't regret choosing myself. The scar on his ring finger had faded where the wedding band used to sit. He'd learned that scars meant healing, that empty spaces could be filled with something better than broken promises. Outside, the city hummed with possibility. Somewhere in it, Olivia was rebuilding her own life. But for the first time since he'd loosened that blue tie in their bridal suite, Ethan realized her story was no longer connected to his. He was finally completely free,